Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings of peace and prosperity. Good day, everyone. I am Umukalthun Sultan Malambat, and my topic is From Orientalism by Edward Said. So before we dig deeper into Orientalism of Edward Said, let us get to know first the author himself. So Edward Said, in full, Edward Wadi Said, sometimes Edward William Said, is born on the first day of November 1935 at Jerusalem, Palestine, and died on September 25, 2003 at New York City. He is a Palestinian-American academic, political activist, and literary critic who examined literature in light of social and cultural politics and was an outspoken proponent of the political rights of the Palestinian people and the creation of an interdependent Palestinian state. Said attended Princeton University for his business administration degree in 1957 and Harvard University for his master's degree in 1960 and doctoral degree in 1964, where he specialized in English literature. So his first book, entitled Joseph Conrad and the Fiction of Autobiography in 1966, was an expansion of his doctoral thesis. His best known and one of the most influential scholarly books of the 20th century is Orientalism, that was published in 1978. So Orientalism. This term is derived from Orientalist, which has been associated traditionally with those engaged in the study of the Orient. So the term the Orient holds a different meaning for different people. As Said points out, Americans associate it with Far East, China, and Japan mainly, while for the Western Europeans, particularly British and French, it conjures up different images. So the Orient is not only adjacent to Europe, it is also the place of Europe's greatest and richest and oldest colonies, the source of its civilizations and languages, its cultural contestant, and one of its deepest and more recurring images of the other. So Orientalism expresses and represents that part culturally and even ideologically as a mode of discourse with supporting institutions, vocabulary, scholarship, imagery, doctrines, even colonial styles. Colonial bureaucracies and colonial styles. So the most readily accepted designation for Orientalism is an academic one, and indeed the label still serves it a number of academic institutions. So in this sense, anyone who teaches, writes about, or researches the Orient, and this applies whether the person is an anthropologist, sociologist, historian, or philologist, either in its specific or general aspects, is an Orientalist, and what he or she does is Orientalism. So as an academic discipline, Orientalism emerged in the late 18th century and has since assembled an archive of knowledge that has served to perpetuate and reinforce Western representations of it. So with this, we can say that Orientalism is a discipline by which the Orient was and is approached systematically as a topic of learning, discovery, and practice. So as a style of thought, it is based upon an ontological and epistemological distinctions made between the Orient most of the time and the Occident. So this definition is more expansive and can accommodate a diverse group of writers such as Seclus, Dante Alighieri, Hugo, and Marx. So Said began with the assumption that the Orient is an inherent fact of nature. So he argued that we must take seriously Vicky's great observations that men make their own history, that what they can know is what they have made, and extend it to geography, as both geographical and cultural entities, to say nothing in historical entities such as locales, regions, geographical sectors, as Orient and Occident are man-made. So therefore, as much as the West itself, the Orient is an idea that has a historical and a tradition of thought, imagery, and vocabulary that have given it a reality and presence in and for the West. So a second qualification is that ideas, culture, and histories cannot seriously be understood or studied without their force, or more precisely their configurations of power, being studied. So to believe that the Orient was created, or as Said called it, Orientalized, and to believe that such things happened simply as a necessity of the imaginations is to be disingenuous. So the relationship between Occident and Orient, according to Said, is a relationship of power, of dominations, of various degrees of a complex hegemony. The Orient was Orientalized not only because it was discovered to be Oriental, all those ways considered commonplace by an average 19th century European, but also because it could be that is submitted to being Oriental. So a third qualification is one ought never assume that the structure of Orientalism is nothing more than a structure of lies or of myths which were the truth about them to be told would simply blow away. So any system of ideas that can remain unchanged is teachable wisdom. From the period of Ernest Renan in the late 1840s until the present in the United States must be something more formidable than a mere collection of lies. So Orientalism, therefore, is not an airy European fantasy about the Orient, but a created body of theory and a practice in which for many generations there has been a considerable material investment. Said's idea is that European and then American interests in the Orient was political, but that it was the culture that created that interest and that acted dynamically along with brute political, economic, and military rationales to make the Orient the varied and complicated place that it obviously was in that field, which Said calls Orientalism. So, Said argued that Orientalism is and does not simply represent a considerable dimension of modern political intellectual culture, and as such has less to do with the Orient than it does with our world. So, accordingly, Orientalism is best viewed in Foucaultian term as a discourse. It's a manifestation of power or knowledge. So, Said says that without examining Orientalism as a discourse, it is not possible to understand the enormously systematic discipline by which the Europe culture was able to manage and even produce the Orient politically, sociologically, militarily, ideologically, scientifically, and imaginatively during the post-Enlightenment period. So if the binary between the Orient and Occident were to disappear altogether, Said says we shall have advanced a little in the process of what Raymond Williams has called the unlearning of the inherent dominative mode. So I think that will be all. Thank you for listening.